911, what is your emergency?
My husband, he's not breathing. He's on the floor. Please, please hurry. There's blood, so much blood.
Welcome to True Crime Chronicles. The call came in at 11:47 p.m. on a Saturday. A woman named Claire Mitchell had found her husband, David Mitchell, dead in their living room. One gunshot wound to the chest. The weapon was on the floor beside him. A note was on the coffee table. The police assumed it was simple, a suicide, a man in financial ruin, a man with a history of depression. Case closed by morning. They were wrong. What they didn't know, what no one could have known, was that the note was a forgery. The gun was not his, and the timeline that Claire Mitchell gave police was off by exactly 47 minutes. 47 minutes that would take 3 years to uncover. 47 minutes that exposed a web of lies, a second victim, and a killer who had been planning the perfect crime for 18 months. This is the story of the timeline that finally exposed the truth. I'm your host. This is True Crime Chronicles. The timeline that finally exposed the truth. The house was at 891 Cedar Hill Drive, a large colonial-style home in an affluent neighborhood. The Mitchell family had lived there for 12 years. David Mitchell was 53 years old. He was a real estate developer. He was worth approximately $8 million. He also had $60,000 in gambling debts that he had hidden from his wife. Claire Mitchell was 49. She was a former nurse, now a stay-at-home mother of 2 teenage daughters. She told police she had been upstairs when she heard a loud bang. She ran downstairs and found her husband on the floor. She did not touch the gun. She did not move the body. She called 911 immediately. He's been so depressed lately. The business, the money. He didn't think he could fix it. I tried to help him. I tried so hard, but he wouldn't talk to me. He wouldn't talk to anyone. Detective Michael Tran arrived at 12:30 a.m. He was 42 years old, 18 years on the force, and had worked over 200 death investigations. He had learned to trust evidence, not emotions. The scene was staged. I knew it the moment I walked in. A suicide note on the coffee table? Most suicide notes are found on the body or on a desk, not on a coffee table in the middle of the room. And the gun, it was a revolver. Revolvers don't eject shell casings, but there was a shell casing on the floor. That meant the shooter used a semi-automatic pistol. Someone swapped the weapons after the murder. Detective Tran documented everything. The position of the body, the angle of the wound, the distance between the gun and the hand, the note, the shell casing, the time on the wall clock, which had stopped at 11:47 p.m., the exact time of the 911 call. But the clock was battery operated, and the batteries were new. A clock with new batteries does not stop unless someone stops it. I asked Claire about the clock. She said it had always been unreliable. She said it stopped all the time. But I checked the batteries myself. They were brand new. That clock did not stop on its own. Someone moved the hands. The autopsy was performed the next morning by Dr. James Okonkwo, a forensic pathologist with 25 years of experience. The gunshot wound was to the left side of the chest, near the heart. The bullet had traveled downward at a 15-degree angle. A downward angle. The gun found at the scene was a .38 caliber revolver, but the bullet recovered from David Mitchell's body was a 9mm. Revolvers do not fire 9mm bullets. Someone had removed the murder weapon and replaced it with a different gun. That was the moment I knew this was not a suicide. Claire Mitchell said she heard one loud bang, but a revolver and a 9mm sound different. A revolver has a sharp crack. A 9mm has a deeper pop. She would have known the difference. She was a nurse. She had been to shooting ranges with her husband. She knew guns. Detective Tran interviewed Claire Mitchell again. This time he asked about the timeline. What time did you go upstairs? Around 10:30. I was tired. David said he wanted to watch the news. I kissed him goodnight and went to bed. What time did you hear the shot? I don't know. I was half asleep. Maybe 11:30? I ran downstairs and called 911. The clock on the wall said 11:47. Did you touch the clock? No, why would I touch the clock? Claire Mitchell's answers were smooth, too smooth. She did not stumble, she did not cry, she did not ask about her husband's body. She asked only when she could go home. Detective Tran had no evidence to hold her, but he had something else, a growing suspicion that the timeline was a lie. Detective Tran built a timeline based on Claire Mitchell's statements. He plotted every event from 8 p.m. to midnight. The timeline looked clean, simple. Claire went upstairs at 10:30 p.m. The shot was fired around 11:30 p.m. Claire called 911 at 11:47 p.m. Police arrived at 12:05 a.m. But there were gaps, 47 minutes of gaps. She said she heard the shot around 11:30, but she didn't call 911 until 11:47. That's 17 minutes. What was she doing for 17 minutes? She said she was in shock. She said she was scared. But she was a nurse. Nurses don't freeze for 17 minutes. They act. Tran requested the cell phone records of Claire Mitchell. What he found changed everything. Claire Mitchell had made a phone call at 11:12 p.m., not to 911, not to a friend. The call lasted 8 minutes. The number belonged to a man named Gregory Hale. I asked Claire who Gregory Hale was. She said he was an old friend, a college friend. She said she called him because she was scared. She said she had a bad feeling that night. But she didn't call 911. She didn't call her sister. She called Gregory Hale at 11:12 p.m., 15 minutes before her husband was shot. Detective Tran interviewed Gregory Hale. Gregory was 48 years old. He was divorced. He worked as a contractor. He had no criminal record. He told police that Claire had been having an affair with him for 11 months. She called me that night. She was crying. She said she couldn't do it anymore. She said she wanted to leave him. I told her to calm down. I told her we would figure it out. Then she hung up. I didn't hear from her again until the next day. She told me David was dead. She said it was suicide. The affair gave Claire Mitchell a motive, but motive is not evidence. Tran needed to prove that Claire was not upstairs at 10:30 p.m. He needed to prove that she was in the living room when David was shot. He went back to the house, and he found a second timeline discrepancy. Detective Tran interviewed the neighbors. Most of them had seen nothing, but one neighbor, an elderly woman named Eleanor Vance, had seen something she had not reported because she thought it was unimportant. I was walking my dog at 10:45 p.m. I saw a car in the Mitchell's driveway, a dark sedan. I didn't recognize it. I thought maybe they had a guest. I didn't think anything of it, but now I wonder. Tran pulled security footage from a nearby gas station. The footage showed a dark sedan entering the Mitchell's neighborhood at 10:38 p.m. The same car left at 11:55 p.m., 8 minutes after the 911 call. The license plate was partially visible. Tran ran it through the database. The car was registered to Gregory Hale. Gregory Hale told me he was home all night. He said he never left his house, but his car was in the Mitchell's driveway at 10:45 p.m. He lied, and Claire lied about being upstairs. She was in the living room with Gregory when David was shot. Tran arrested Gregory Hale for questioning. This time, Gregory did not have a lawyer. He broke within 20 minutes. I didn't shoot him. I swear, Claire did it. She planned the whole thing. She said we could be together. She said the insurance money would set us up. She told me to come over that night. She said she would handle everything. I got there at 10:30. She was already crying. She said she had done it. David was on the floor. There was blood everywhere. I panicked. I left. I didn't know what to do. Gregory Hale's confession was recorded. He described the scene in detail. David Mitchell on the floor, a gun in Claire's hand, the note already written, the clock already stopped. But Gregory was not the killer. Claire Mitchell was. Detective Tran reconstructed the real timeline using Gregory's confession, the cell phone records, the neighbor's testimony, and the security footage. Here is what actually happened on the night David Mitchell was murdered. At 8 p.m., Claire and David had dinner. They argued about money. David told Claire he had lost most of their savings. Claire pretended to be supportive. She was not. She had been planning his murder for 18 months. At 9:30 p.m., Claire texted Gregory Hale, "Tonight, be ready." At 10 p.m., Claire convinced David to sit in the living room and watch television. She gave him a glass of whiskey. She had not poisoned it. She wanted him alert. She wanted him to see her face when she pulled the trigger. At 10:15 p.m., Claire went upstairs. She did not go to bed. She retrieved a 9mm pistol from a locked box in her closet. She had bought the gun 6 months earlier under a false name. At 10:30 p.m., Gregory Hale arrived. Claire let him in. She told him to wait in the kitchen. At 10:38 p.m., Claire walked into the living room. David was watching the news. He looked up. He smiled. She shot him once in the chest. At 10:39 p.m., David Mitchell died on his living room floor. At 10:40 p.m., Claire placed the suicide note on the coffee table. She had written it 2 weeks earlier. She practiced his handwriting for months. At 10:42 p.m., Claire stopped the wall clock. She moved the hands to 11:47. At 10:45 p.m., Claire called Gregory into the living room. She showed him the body. She told him to leave. He did. At 10:55 p.m., Claire cleaned the gun. She wiped off her fingerprints. She placed a different gun, a revolver, beside David's hand. At 11:12 p.m., Claire called Gregory Hale. She wanted an alibi. She wanted the phone record to show a call before the shooting, but the shooting had already happened. The call was not a cry for help. It was a cover. At 11:30 p.m., Claire waited. She sat on the stairs. She practiced her 911 voice. At 11:47 p.m., Claire called 911. She was crying. She was believable. She was a monster. Claire Mitchell was arrested at her sister's house 3 days after Gregory Hale's confession. She did not cry. She did not ask for a lawyer. She sat in the interrogation room with her arms crossed and her eyes cold. We know about Gregory. We know about the gun. We know about the clock. We know you stopped it. We know you wrote the note. We know you shot your husband at 10:38 p.m., not 11:30. The timeline is broken, Claire, and so are you. You can't prove any of that. We have Gregory's confession. We have his car on camera. We have your phone records. We have the bullet. We have the wrong gun at the scene. And we have a neighbor who saw Gregory's car in your driveway at 10:45 p.m. You said you were upstairs at 10:30. You were not. You were in the living room with a gun. He ruined me. He ruined our family. He lost everything, and he expected me to just accept it, to sell the house, to send the girls to public school, to live like a peasant. I worked too hard for that. I deserved better. So you killed him. Yes, I killed him, and I would do it again. Claire Mitchell confessed to the murder. She showed no remorse. She smiled when she described the look on David's face. She told the detective that she had enjoyed watching him die. The confession was recorded. It lasted 2 hours. It is now used in forensic psychology classes as a case study in antisocial personality disorder. The trial of Claire Mitchell for the first-degree murder of David Mitchell began 18 months after her arrest. The prosecution presented 22 days of evidence: the real timeline, the cell phone records, the security footage, the neighbor's testimony, Gregory Hale's confession, Claire's confession. The defense argued that Claire was a victim of years of emotional abuse. They said she snapped. They said it was temporary insanity. They brought in a psychologist who testified that Claire had battered woman syndrome. The prosecution brought in a forensic psychiatrist who testified that Claire showed no signs of abuse. She showed signs of calculation. She showed signs of greed. She showed signs of a woman who had planned every detail for 18 months. She did not snap, she plotted. She bought a gun under a false name. She practiced her husband's handwriting. She recruited a lover to be her alibi. She stopped a clock. She staged a suicide. And then she called 911 with tears in her eyes. That is not a woman who snapped. That is a woman who knew exactly what she was doing. The jury deliberated for 12 hours. On the charge of murder in the first degree, we, the jury, find the defendant guilty. Mrs. Mitchell, you executed your husband in cold blood. You then staged his death to look like a suicide. You manipulated everyone around you. You showed no remorse. You showed no humanity. I sentence you to life in prison without the possibility of parole. David Mitchell's 2 daughters were placed in the custody of his sister. They do not visit their mother. They have changed their last names. They told a reporter, "Our mother died the night she killed our father. The woman in prison is a stranger." Gregory Hale was charged as an accessory to murder. He served 4 years in federal prison. He was released in 2022. He now lives in a small town in Oregon. He does not speak about Claire Mitchell. The house at 891 Cedar Hill Drive was sold at auction. The new owners renovated the entire first floor. They removed the living room floor. They replaced the wall where the clock hung. But the real estate agent does not tell buyers what happened there. Some things, she says, are better left unsaid. The timeline was the key. Without it, she would have walked. She would have collected the insurance money. She would have married Gregory. She would have gotten away with murder. But she made one mistake. She thought she could control time. She thought she could stop a clock and stop the truth. She was wrong. After the trial, Detective Tran continued investigating Claire Mitchell's past. He found something that no one had expected. Claire Mitchell had been married once before. His name was Robert Cross. He died in 2002. The cause of death was ruled a heart attack. He was 42 years old. I requested Robert Cross's autopsy report. It said he died of a heart attack, but Robert was a marathon runner. He had no history of heart disease, and he was 42 years old. That's young for a heart attack, too young. Tran requested an exhumation of Robert Cross's body. It took 2 years to get a judge's approval. When the body was exhumed, a new autopsy was performed. The results were shocking. Robert Cross did not die of a heart attack. He died of insulin poisoning. Someone injected him with a lethal dose of insulin. The symptoms mimicked a heart attack perfectly. This was a homicide. Claire Mitchell was charged with the murder of Robert Cross. She was already serving life for the murder of David Mitchell. She did not contest the new charges. She pleaded guilty. She received an additional 25 years. Robert Cross's family finally buried him properly. His mother, who had always suspected Claire, stood at the grave and said, "I waited 20 years for this. 20 years, but justice came. It always comes." Claire Mitchell is now incarcerated at a maximum security women's prison. She has filed 4 appeals. All have been denied. She maintains that she did nothing wrong. She told a prison psychologist they deserved what they got, both of them. The timeline that Detective Tran built is now taught at the FBI Academy as an example of forensic reconstruction. It is considered one of the most detailed and accurate timelines ever presented in a murder trial. The truth was the truth, and the truth was the only weapon we needed. Claire Mitchell thought she could lie her way out of anything. She thought she was smarter than everyone, but she forgot one thing. Time does not lie. Clocks can be stopped. Phone records cannot. Security footage cannot. Science cannot. David Mitchell's daughters have started a foundation in their father's name. It provides financial counseling to families affected by gambling addiction. They do not mention their mother. They never will. Robert Cross's mother died 3 years after the exhumation. She was buried next to her son. Her headstone reads, "At last, together."
The case that began with a 911 call and a stopped clock ended with 2 convictions, 2 bodies exhumed, and 2 families given answers. The timeline was the key. 47 minutes, that was all. 47 minutes that Claire Mitchell thought she could hide. 47 minutes that she spent staging a suicide, wiping a gun, and practicing her tears. But time is not a thing that can be staged. Time is not a thing that can be stopped. Time is the only witness that never lies. You have been listening to True Crime Chronicles. This was the timeline that finally exposed the truth. No continuation, no open threads, just a story, a closed file, and the quiet certainty that the truth, no matter how buried, will always find a way to surface. Thank you for listening. Stay safe, and remember, the truth has a timeline, and that timeline always runs out.